On Highway 16, west of Battleford, Saskatchewan, is the village of Delmas. The village is named after Father Delmas, born in France. There is nothing remarkable about the village. There are no signs that say that there was once an Indian residential school here, and also that this was the site of the former Thunderchild and Moosomin reserves. No sign says that they were relocated by the government and Father Delmas, who wanted his own French Catholic community. In 1948, the residential school was burned down by a group of 4 boys who had warned most of the students of their plan so they could all escape. My father, Patrick Favel, attended the school and was present the night it was burned. January 13, 1948.
Yeah, I'm Ken Tertuzis. I was born and raised right here in Palmyhurst. My parents were Mary and George Tertuzis. And we used to go to church. And the priest used to come out there in the car. And I wanted to ride the car, so I volunteered to go to school in Delmas. I guess I was pretty small because small kids were taken over to the girls' side so they wouldn't be picked on the boys' side. It was a little rough with you new kids. I didn't mind it too much because I had an older brother that was in there already. He had gone a year before me. And started school. We enjoyed it, you know, played outside. We had a big yard. Got to know all your boys from the same reserve, coming and playing with them and being friends. Some boys used to run away. One time, me and your dad and Solomon Smaggin said, let's run away just before supper time. Okay. So we went running back behind that church, and there was a log building there where people used to camp. We used to call it Indian House. We were there, and the supper bell rang. We changed our mind. We came running back for supper. That's the only time I tried running away. Yeah, some boys, they'd run away all the time. They got to know the roads, you know.
Awin piitaskat na skumaya kohta awinu. Na skumun. Yeah. My name is Teresa Sapp. I was from Palmmaker. I was Samaganist. And I've been married 67 years. I had 8 kids. 4 boys, 4 girls. I lost 1 girl. Residential school Delmas ngituta. We pategi kiwat sian teams. Ni soskia tegia ya. Gimiu pamiguna nagmana meusko. Mina. Itok mana mi sete. Tapua tau ya muy kuesa kuas kam no pamigaw na. Aku poko mane ki usniks ko nawasotsik. Ekutamangi takake tenan. Pakues kane mua. Kita tayo kami na kawia suwe ahom. Kampago sumuni kaya. Iskwessak. Pasi mo na uso iskwessak. Tanagin nakatsistawak. Umuso mo. Eki mamano kay tutukoy man. Kwentan set kwentante usna kaya. Seats ke sikate ke. Anas kanegin. Wa me kwaya ya ikipitama. Tako pitako ko ko giskwessak. Tane mises ya saka se home. Hindi kamot si ko. En pago semua hati nina. Paskat na uskape usayawa. Tanegin nakatita kange. Pasimos kwesa. Makan ko tao ko matso. En pago semua umeko. Ke tahta ka nuap mau petasta mo teta meusko. Nka ka nuap mau ko giskwessak. Ko hao peg ni mi ton tane pasakwap semot. Tanay so te piso mo semot. Ka peta ko teta meusko tapasina nati. Ako kame ko ni mi tote takipeta o mamuen kamui. Naka kamate pasaste ho. Uya asen step mo ya uya mo. Kaki on tapasina. Ki kwa meta siga meg tanay meusko vente. Tama nege. Eki wawiyate tama como estas.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of us that, all of us, I guess, have attended Sundances, eh? So we decided to make one. We had fun because we thought we were really doing something, our own way for once,
That's a good story.
That must have been a real good prayer.
Yeah.
To be able to sing there and to be heard by the Creator, knowing our situation, eh? Mm-hmm. That was a good prayer done by all the reserves surrounding North Battleford. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I taught in Cree, because my dad told me before we left, for every word I learned in English, not to forget the Cree word. This way I'll never lose it, because he also went to residential school with his brothers, and that's what his dad told him. This is how come I'm able to still talk fluent Cree. Eh? Ready? Okay. Thanks for the tobacco and the offering. Appreciate that. Thank you. My name is Leona Tutusis, and I come from Pound Maker. And I went to Delmas when I was 6 till the place burned out. It'll be a year and a half, I guess.
En misa ako kasikanak. Mitasak mi naman misa ko. Ketahto kamatsuet so wana meusko pe kaya. Atiksi katamo. Efter matsue. Wai winsa. Uskaya nana toigi estegi. Toni kumako makamamisa ike ako. Uhita estegi to pexquest. Sika tuota ko time usko. Ekse. Mui katson jo tikkiskamaan. Uskai winsa. Mä taagi puhumaan.
Bis nakskaus kiniluom te tagabi ottaasumu. En mä näen me atakaagi puskordan ditagaga tuutagi webinauto. Se apsumu nape metosi taasi.
Tepskagan me egi sumitso. Kwa mana egi muhti mana pikau ya kiikwei. Wawista mako awa meusko. Ketahto kapahpasua kiikwei tapskuts. Saya. Kas kapahteu. It's just toa meusko kunta. Joo. Ketahto kaya ja soe paikin osko kaya osko tenkan. Että kun minä teen niistä boissa kasas kaikessa kulke. Ja. Mä tikiste. Joku se kun kahki on kapassa kutsuu kun ameuskonna kun takpeis pahtaa. Get all everybody with their jackets and rubbers. I think there's a fire. Wow. Tänne kun ei pahtaatsak. Ei pahpustask sinne ahaa tihti. Eikin vaan pustask sinne pahtaatsak. Ehkä saake ahaa taui. Ei kovaa meusko ja kipuhteen kuvaa. Mui viiuhteen näis kohteen. Eko peukus niks kun kuutsi ihuutse. Ruusakaa kiitti. Kappakamahaatan me uskoo. Ei hiikatee weppinaataan tavo tittoa. Juhtee weppinaamaan toi voi viipahtaa. Kun teekon nähtee niin poutsik niin sukus niks koo. Skuessa kukee. Et tahtee puotte kauia. Kun tehtaa vain meuskoo muhti eihän pitee mamaatot. Ei koo kappakamahu. Eikö se vaan? Kinui siis samman toneekin pikiteek pihtsai. Muissa maakeus pakten kauia. Eikö se kun ehtee kun niin paui kauia että vahjavuus. Ei kistee kun me kanoa pahtamaan. Tahto ennen niistä eikä peppinä koteekin. Ei kun ne uskai winsa. Mäkin kun juhtii taapatan. Eikin saa kihtaatsik.
Do you remember there was a guy, they called him Bosky, like he lived...
Yeah.
Toussaint.
Bousquet.
Yeah.
Is that the one?
Yeah, what was his name?
Toussaint Bosky.
Bousquet.
Okay, he spoke Cree?
Oh, yeah.
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 Was he an old Frenchman?
Yeah, well, he was part Indian, part French.
Okay.
He was the same ancestry as my dad. Well, my dad spoke Cree till he was 7 years old. He couldn't talk English. Yeah, my aunt, there was a bunch of sisters there, and my aunt married a tailor, and they spoke English only.
Yes.
And she come and visit, and they were all talking Cree, because that's what they spoke. And she said, "Are you going to raise white kids or are you going to raise Indians? You better make a choice." And Dad said she never spoke Cree again, ever. And Dad spoke French, and he spoke English, and he spoke Cree. This road here goes to Sweetgrass, and it had wagon ruts in that deep across our pasture and off across the hills when the Indians would come and, is it all right to say Indians?
Yes.
Okay, that's what we always called them. And,
Yeah.
and they would camp, you know, there's a hill here and a hill back there. They would camp there on their way to go and visit the kids at the school. Like.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So they would go visit their children at the
Well,
school?
they weren't allowed to visit a lot because when they got together, they'd talk Cree, and then that was no. It was just a shame.
But they would come and visit.
Oh yeah, like they'd bring the young ones, you know, with them. They'd always have a couple of little kids running around. The people who were out here were mixed with Indian because that was who there was. You know, they were the people who knew this land, and then they were open. They were very generous people.
Yeah.
They mixed with them. But when Father Delmas started Delmas, he started bringing them out right from France.
My grandmother, Philomene Starr, was originally from Moosomin and married into Thunderchild. My mother, Lily Favel, was from Thunderchild. When Thunderchild and Moosomin were preparing to leave, some of their graves were moved and reburied in the residential schoolyard.
When Johnny Roy built his house, and I know this from him specifically, he said once that when they were digging the basement for his house, they found 2 graves. And he told the people, you dig farther down and you put the graves down below.
He didn't talk about it. He just said.
No, he said, no, we're not going to tell anybody.
He
about
said they
this.
had red hair. They were 2 kids, and he said they had red hair. But my sister was a nurse, and she said hair turns red when they're in the grave. It doesn't matter what color their hair was when they're put in there.
Oh my.
She said red doesn't mean nothing. So, but it fueled Delmas, you know, that school.
Okay.
There was a baker shop in Delmas, and every second day during our school year, every second day they would go with a dray load of bread from the baker shop to the school. That would pass our school every day, every second day, every year. And the coal, hauling the coal to keep it for the winter.
They spent a month at hauling that coal from the railroad cars, you know, across. There was a whole bunch of work that came to our town because that school was there.
A statue of Joan of Arc, patron saint of France, stood near the school in a stone garden of prayer and contemplation. It was moved next to the new church. It is one of the few reminders that there was once a residential school. While the statue saw the fire as it lit up the cold January night, did she weep?
And I used to be I had a good friend there by the name of Edwin Smaggins. He was bigger than me. He was already in the big boys group. Big boys group, they ran everything, eh? And he tells me, you know, the boys are going to burn it down. I said, okay. That stayed in my mind there, that supper time. So I told him we used to go skating outside after supper for an hour, and the little boys were already taken upstairs to go to bed at 7 o'clock. I snuck my brother out, go skating with me and preparing for this fire. So coming in, I guess, you know, we hung our clothes all together so we could grab them running out. And my younger brother there, he hung his new skates with his clothes, eh? It was 8 o'clock, we were going in. My brother was with me, and sister seen him. Hey, you're supposed to be upstairs already, sleeping. So he took his time going upstairs, the first flight of stairs. Then that's when they hollered, fire! He come running down, he grabbed his clothes, and me too, I grabbed my clothes, and we went outside to the skating ring to go and put our clothes on. Just as I remember going out, that furnace room was right below the boys' room there, the big hall. Going out, I could see that big window. Well, it wasn't a big window. It was already red. You could see it was smoke, eh? Red smoke. So we went and put our clothes on. Sisters come running out, start hollering for us to get together behind the school.
This is the boys' side, and that was the girls, eh? There used to be a church there. It was further this way. And I don't know what was wrong with them, because I don't know, it seemed like they just hated us. And why aren't trying to teach us, eh? That's the one thing I never understand. You couldn't do anything. That none asked me. I was standing there and said, you guys help me lift these windows, eh? So that's what we were doing. I left that one, and they had, I don't know, a walkie stick, I guess they just used for propping them up. And he picked that up and hit me right across here, eh? Why? I used to have a lump in here finally. Yeah, couldn't understand why he would. What was I doing wrong? You want me to lift that up? So I opened it up and. Oh, they're mean. Holy smokes. That was hot. Well, I never heard or anything what's going to happen. I was too young, I guess, too small. Anyway, we were going to go upstairs, and we were standing there, but there are kind of cracks in there's an old building. I noticed the smoke coming through there, and I told Kenny, I said, there's smoke coming up here. But then he called a nun, and when they opened the door, all the smoke came up. That's how I found out that thing was on. But then people from the town there came down there, and they had a hand pump there trying to put this fire out.
Did you have time to get your clothes?
I didn't. I was so excited. And there was a bunch of us that was standing there. We were waiting for the nun to open the door, And he said, oh, no. I put it out. It got worse. Finally, we was forced to open the door, and a whole bunch of us just ran out. Now it's a shirt, And it's supposed to have been 30 below. But he was so darn excited, Even Gabe was the same. He didn't have a jacket, just little shoes, and we were running through the snow, around. And we went around the girls' side there, and here, when I came down there, here's my brother holding my clothes, because he knew I was gone, and I didn't take anything with me. So, but nobody grabbed Gabe's, so they gave him a blanket. Yeah, I guess they had time to go, but shit, I just want to get out of there.
But this was when it burned down. That was all that stood that next day. Was that big tall chimney, and our nuns wouldn't let us go there because they said that chimney could topple at any time.
So did you see the fire?
My brother went up. I was just a kid, but my brother rode a horse into town, and he was just caving in when he got there.
Are we starting?
Yep, whenever you're ready.
My name is Gavin Baptiste. I'm from Little Pine. My treaty number is 459. My used to be treaty number is 236 Little Pine. My father is Edward Baptiste. My mother is Mariah Kennedy. My dad was one of the first ones that were taken to Onion Lake Residential School back. He was born in 1909. It was about 10 or some odd years that he was taken to Onion Lake and stayed there for about 7 years. During that time, he suffered punishment, he suffered being lonely, he suffered from being hungry, and he suffered the abuse of the people that were handling the school. At one point in time, he was starving because all they did was feed him porridge, breakfast, supper, and dinner. So when he had a chance, he wrote to his parents in Little Pine. That letter got into the press gallery in Ottawa. And a guy by the name of Tom Malloy wrote a book on Canada's national crime and My father's story is there. It's on page 106, chapter 6. The whole story of my dad being there and writing letters, and after that they did an investigation how he was suffering malnutrition or anything. Even from Sweetgrass, going looking over that hill, they saw that fire. It must have been a big blaze. And there were kids in there. There were kids in there. They were outside. And it was cold in January. I believe it was in January, it was winter anyway. They were standing outside shivering. I guess one of the things that you got to give credit to the nuns, they accounted for everybody. They made sure that everybody was accounted for. But it was those three people that burned the school. Those were the heroes. They took down a system that was abusing their people. But I don't know. Eventually they will be put in the archives and say, hey, these were the people that burned the school. These were heroes. Many of them, you know, the system would call them criminals. But for us that understand what happened in residential school, we know that they did something great. On the north side, there's a graveyard where residential school students were. A lot of them were going over, a lot of them were seen. The only noticeable gravesite that I saw with a marker was a guy who was 13 years old by the name of Vachanam. That graveyard is still there. You guys should go see that. I can show you where it is. I don't know exactly how they burned it, but they burned it or a thing around the stove. They put a bunch of stuff there and it caught fire. Probably it didn't take much to burn down that school because it's all made of lumber. Lumber burns, it burns pretty fast. Getting away from that school that night must have been very well planned because everybody got out. When we talk about what good came out of it, when we talk about what bad things came out of it, I remember Floyd Favel used to say that. I didn't do his hearing anyway, but she said it was good. They learned how to sew. They learned how to be domestic. He was a good cook to the end. It was my auntie, and that part was good. The kids learned how to farm. You know, they learned how to do chores. Residential school people are pretty clean. They're pretty clean. They wipe their thing, and they're neat. My dad was neat. This is where you probably learned that from the army too. But everything was controlled. That's one of the things. The bad things, they didn't have any emotion. They didn't know how they hurt people. They became the sad part of things in life. They became addicted to many addictions. They became a womanizer. Whatever they learned in residential school, they brought back to the communities, abusing children sexually, physically, mentally. They going from one because they didn't have relationships. This is the bad part. That what we still see today. This is what we still carry on. And this is one of the things, the healing part of things that we need to look at. Because I work in an area right now, still today, is addictions. We've been burying guys left and right, he knows that. And many of these people are in addictions. They come, they go die in the city, they get involved with drugs, and we bring them back. Very rarely we have buried people complete 75, 80 who has died of naturally. It's mostly addictions related, there's many different forms. There's 274 different addictions. And we don't realize it's doing to us. Eating is one of them. How we eat, how we abuse the food, our mental health. This comes from there.
This little village played a large role in my family history and in my community of Poundmaker. The field on which the school once stood is now just a hayfield. When I think back to the morning after the fire, I imagine what the priests and nuns must have thought. All that remained of Father Dalmas' French dream on the northern prairies was just ashes and embers.
But I think I'm going to end now. I'm very happy to got interviewed. I hope I got a little bit of the story of that day of the fire. The fire was used, the fire was made, the fire happened. And that was not the only fire. St. Barnabas burned as well, eventually. Those people that got burned in St. Barnabas in Onion Lake went to PA. And the abusers went along with them. Because I did some interviews from that area, and they moved to PA, and same thing happened.